You know, when you're faced with a really tough choice, one where any decision is going to cause some harm, how do you even begin to decide what's fair? Well, today we're diving into this powerful mental tool. It's actually a thought experiment from philosophy that helps us cut through our own biases to make clearer, more impartial decisions. So let's just jump right in with a dilemma that isn't science fiction anymore. Picture this. You're in your self-driving car and it has to make an impossible choice. It can either swerve and sacrifice you, the only passenger, or it can plow straight ahead into a crowd of people. What's the right call? I mean, it's a question that really puts our own survival instinct up against the greater good. And this really gets to the heart of the problem. Researchers call it the social dilemma of autonomous vehicles. In theory, we all want cars to be programmed to save the most lives, right? To minimize harm. But when it's our car, our survival instinct just takes over, and suddenly we want it to protect us no matter what. And this conflict makes it incredibly hard to create one single ethical rule for all these machines. So, how in the world do you solve a puzzle like this? Well, researchers turn to a pretty radical idea from the world of philosophy. It's a thought experiment designed to literally force us to be fair. This idea comes from a philosopher named John Rawls. He was obsessed with figuring out how to create a truly just society. He believed that every single person has rights that are so fundamental, as this quote shows, that even the well-being of the whole group can't just trample all over them. And wrestling with this led him to a really powerful thought experiment. He called it the veil of ignorance, and the concept is actually pretty simple. Imagine you have to decide on a rule for society, but here's the catch. You don't know who you're going to be. You don't know if you'll be the pedestrian in the street or the passenger in the car. Since you could end up in any of those positions, you're forced to pick the outcome that's the most fair for everyone involved. And here's how you can actually use it. It's basically a three-step process. First, you've got your dilemma. Second, you step behind this imaginary veil and you pretend you have an equal chance of being any person affected by the choice. And third, from that totally impartial point of view, you make the call. The whole point is that it forces you to pick the option that's fairest to the whole group, because hey, you could end up being anyone. Okay, so that's the theory. But the big question for scientists was, does this cool philosophical idea actually change how real people make decisions? So let's look at how they designed an experiment to put it to the test. And this was the real challenge, right? A thought experiment is one thing, but getting hard, measurable data on it is something else entirely. How do you actually prove that a way of thinking can shift someone's moral compass? The researchers came up with this beautifully simple design. They took a moral dilemma and they showed it to two different groups. The control group, they just had to make a decision straight up. But the second group, the VOI group, first had to walk through the veil of ignorance exercise, imagining they had an equal chance of being any person affected before they made their final choice. And honestly, the results were fascinating. Just going through this simple thought experiment had a really consistent and powerful effect on what people chose to do. Okay, let's get into the data. They started with a classic ethical problem, the footbridge dilemma. In the control group, only about 24% of people said it was okay to push one person off a bridge to save 5 others. But in the group that used the veil of ignorance first, that number jumped all the way to 38%. That's a huge shift toward the choice that saves more lives. Then they tried a bioethics dilemma. Would you take oxygen from one stable patient to save 9 incoming earthquake victims? And you see the same pattern. The control group was at 43% yes, but after using the VOI group went up to 54% in favor of saving the greater number of people. Now, this is where it gets really interesting because it moves from a hypothetical to something with real stakes. Participants were told a real $200 donation would be made based on their choice. They could either cure 1 American or 2 people in India. And the veil of ignorance pushed people to get past their national bias. 63% chose the more effective charity that saved more lives, compared to just 54% in the control group. And this brings us right back to that self-driving car question from the beginning. When they were asked about enforcing a policy that would save more pedestrians, the control group was kind of split, with 58% saying yes. But just look at the VOI group. After they imagined they could be the passenger or one of the pedestrians, support for the life-saving policy just soared. An incredible 83%. I mean, that is a massive, massive shift. The veil of ignorance didn't just nudge people a little bit. It fundamentally changed how they looked at the problem. It actually aligned their personal choice with what's good for society. It basically solved that social dilemma we talked about at the start. But why? Why is it so effective? Is it just some kind of psychological trick, or is there something deeper happening here? The researchers really wanted to be sure. So, one theory was that it's something called anchoring. Maybe people just gave the utilitarian answer in the first part of the exercise and then felt like they had to be consistent in the second part. But the researchers were clever. They ran control experiments to rule this out, and they found that just answering a different utilitarian question first didn't produce the same effect. So, it wasn't just about consistency. And that brings us to the magic ingredient: impartiality. In another really smart control experiment, they had people use a reversed veil, where they were told they had a skewed chance of being the single victim in the car. And what happened? The effect was much, much weaker. This proves that it's the idea of giving everyone an equal stake, true impartiality, that's really driving this moral shift. So what does all this mean for us? It means we actually have a tested, powerful tool for making better, fairer decisions, especially when our own emotions and biases are trying to get in the way.
So let's just recap what we've learned here. The veil of ignorance isn't just a fuzzy gut feeling. It's a real reasoning tool. We've seen that it consistently makes people choose what's best for the greater good. And it works for all kinds of dilemmas: philosophical, medical, even public policy. And the key, the real secret sauce, is that it forces you into a truly impartial perspective.
Ultimately, what this tool does is give us a simple but really profound question to ask ourselves whenever we're stuck. It's a question that cuts right through self-interest and our personal biases to help us find a fairer path. And that question is, what would I want for myself if I didn't know who I was going to be? And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. Think about a hard choice, maybe in your own life, or a big debate happening in our society right now. What might change if all of us just took a moment to step behind the veil and make a decision from there?